once upon a time in the heart of Mesoamerica, where city-states flourished under their own powerful rulers and sophisticated cultures thrived along vibrant canals that snaked through vast gardens floating on water like lily pads, there was an empire reaching toward the heavens. The great city of Tenochtitlan stood majestically at its center, a place so grand it seemed to have been carved out by gods themselves from a teeming jungle that encircled and enshrouded this marvel, making way for temples with steps descending into the earth itself. In the shadow of these towering structures lived an old priest named Zipili. His eyes had seen many seasons come to pass over Tenochtitlan as he stood sentinel from his high temple on a small island in Lake Texcoco, gazing out upon this city that pulsed with life and prosperity before him each day. He watched the Aztecs build grand altars for their gods atop gleaming pyramids, listened to children chatter excitedly about coming adult ceremonies where they would dance through fireballs thrown by priests as part of sacred rites or testament that this world was alive with spirit and meaning. Zipili, however, had begun noticing the strange omens in the sky just before Cortez's ships appeared on the horizon one fateful morning amidst a sea of floating gardens where flowers perfumed the air as if to mask impending doom or scent that would soon be overwhelmed by smoke and ash. The priest had spent years studying Quetzalcoatl, an entity represented in myths both feared and revered for its divine association with creation and destruction alike. Tales of the deity's return were whispered even within these walls as a prophecy that spoke not only to his power, but also about cataclysmic changes. As he stood there, clad in vibrant feathers adorning him like armor against misfortune, Zipili felt the weight of this impending doom settling upon his heart, a foreboding sense that these omens were heralding not just a change but an end. He watched as he had always done, through eyes heavy with years and soul burdened by knowledge too vast to fathom, observing children playing in the sun-dappled streets below him while their parents tended gardens of marigolds, or cities so full of life that it seemed untouchable. Yet beneath this sense of normalcy lay a tremor Zipili could not ignore, for even as he gazed upon Tenochtitlan's bustling markets where traders from distant lands exchanged goods, their eyes told stories far different than the songs they sang in praise to Huitzilopochtli, god of sun and war. The smoke emanating softly from temples did not just rise towards heaven, but also whispered secrets carried across seas by men whose ships were like metal birds gliding through water, their sails filled with whispers instead of wings that spoke tales in many tongues, or language foreign to the ears Zipili had known since birth. There was talk among his kin about these newcomers who came from beyond even the farthest reaches imaginable, men led by a man named Cortez, whose name seemed like an echo of divine power itself and stirred unease in every conversation that touched on their arrival, a mere handful to bring with them such chaos. The Aztecs had built this city strong enough for the gods themselves, but never imagined what strength lay not just within stone or bloodline, but also conviction born from afar across oceans and continents, where men spoke of conquest as if it were their birthright or right that would soon be sought with a fury unmatched in history. As the sun dipped low on Tenochtitlan's horizon, casting golden hues upon temples now touched by dust instead of offerings, and filling canals, not just with water, but also uncertainty about what tomorrow might bring, Zipili turned away from his temple to walk among those who would one day face the unknown. Though he knew little could be done in this moment, as prophecies often told themselves wrapped tightly like enigmas that resisted unraveling even by gods themselves, his heart ached for what was yet to come, and how his people must navigate through it together or fall from the heavens' grace. And so he walked amongst them in silent contemplation until darkness cloaked Tenochtitlan's streets, in a city where every stone told tales of glory and devotion to gods, who walked among them in spirit if not flesh. Zipili's footsteps carried weight beyond his own, felt as though he bore the burden of prophecy itself on this evening when shadows grew long. The air had taken on a chill that spoke not just of an approaching night, but also hinted at change stirring in realms both seen and unseen, threatening to sweep across Tenochtitlan with all the subtlety of tempests upon its waters. Zipili's gaze fell often towards his temple's great pikes chancel, where once he had offered prayers for prosperity, now echoed only by memories and a hushed reverence from those who still remembered how to listen. The last days of the sun were painting fiery arcs across azure skies as if trying desperately to outshine forthcoming omens that danced on winds heralding unrest, though none could foresee exactly what shape this change would take or where it might lead their beloved city. As he walked past the marketplace, whose vibrant colors and lively barter no longer seemed as bright with promise under his watchful eyes, Zipili observed a young boy who had come to sell fruits beyond Tenochtitlan's border surplace, where sunlight kissed fields of maize far more gently. The lad's mother was not there. She told tales on the streets that even in love and loss seemed distant as stars, leaving him with a guardian who spoke softly but carried wisdom born from many silent nights spent under foreign skeeser world where dreams were sown of conquest by men whose hearts beat to drums of ambition. The boy's father had been one among the few captains granted audience at distant courts, his name a harbinger that drew envious whispers and reverent silence alike. Yet he spoke rarely now, save for when tales would drift from foreign shores into Tenochtitlan, where they entwined with local legends to create new myths of their own. His father's words were as potions, mixing fearsome prophecies with dreams that promised the return of a great power once fought lost or force so strong it could challenge gods themselves and mold destinies anew. Amidst this backdrop, where past glories felt like echoes fading into twilight's embrace, Zipili sought counsel with his closest confidants within the palace walls that had once stood as a beacon of divine order, temple to human achievement and celeste zero-isle harmony. They shared hushed conversations by candlelight, where rumors swirled like leaves in an autumn gale, tales woven from distant lands with threads soaked in the blood of foreign strangers who once traversed oceanic expanses for conquests, sweet promissory pursuit that now seemed as much a part of their heritage as it was a mere shadow on history's horizon. Zipili knew not if these stories spun by captains and scholars were but whispers lost to the wind or omens clothed in riddles meant for his ears alone, yet he could feel them settling upon him like silt carried downstream or muddle of power politics that transcended even divine intent. Was this young boy with eyes as wide and knowing as a seer's, a link to these world-shaking winds brought by faraway lands where conquest was not just for the glory, but seemed ingrained in blood, like sacred water running through their veins, or concept alien yet undeniably present amongst his people? As he passed under bridges that once bore offerings, now only ripples of uncertainty and tales of strangers who had become a part of Tenochtitlan's own tapestry, Zipili considered the role fate might weave for him, a man whose name seemed like an echo of divine power itself. It stirred unease in every conversation that touched on his arrival, as if he were both herald and harbinger without a clear sign from beyond or within to guide their path forward through these times teetering between the fall of gods and the rise of men who dared think themselves equal among them. The city's grandeur lay not just in its temples, but also in how it had always been shaped by those with ambition, or fact that now seemed a double-edged sword for Zipili, as he understood his people's history of reaching towards the heavens and drawing strength from their gods. Yet here they were at this crossroad where not even prophecies could provide. The city was alive in its bustling markets where traders hawked exotic goods from far-off lands. Amidst this commerce flowed tales of conquests, as if they too had come to life, whispering through the crowded alleys and vibrant plazas that Zipili traversed. As he passed under bridges on sacred paths, where ceremonial offerings were thrown into water for cleansing purposes before important events or after battles won in honor of deities, sensed a profound connection to the city's enduring past, even as uncertainty rippled through his thoughts like never before seen waves disrupting Tenochtitlan's placid waters. The air was thick with anticipation and fear, because change loomed on Horus 01D. Rumors swirled of a powerful new leader emerging from the north, one who did not worship as Zipili had been taught to believe since childhood, or belief that power derived directly from divine right. Though his heart ached with nostalgia for an era where gods seemed almost within reach, and fear clenched at its edges like a relentless shadow seeking purchase in every darkened corner of the mind, Zipili knew he could not hide away while decisions were being made that would shape their future irrevocably. It was during these twilight hours, when thoughts turned to prophecies and omens, or tapestry woven with threads pulled from dreams shared by seers who saw beyond the veil of this world into what lay just over yonder horizon, where gods walked among men not as equals but still revered. Their visions were fragmentary at best, yet They spoke to him in hushed undertones that his ears strained to hear. A coming time when Tenochtitlan's connection with the divine might be severed by human ambition and desire for earthly power. And so it was on this evening, as twilight deepened into velvety night, Zipili found himself atop an unfinished temple that reached skyward, a place where he could commune with his ancestors in whispers carried away from those below by the breeze of change. Here did they implore him to remember their ancient ways and wisdom, but also warned against resisting this new tide, for even gods must sometimes bow before humanity's relentless march forward. His people had always looked towards the sky with reverence, tracing patterns in sand beneath starlight that told stories of creation or tradition deeply rooted within their souls, as if embedded by divine hands themselves across generations, untold until now when he stood at this threshold between epochs. His very name seemed an offering to divinity itself, yet the echoes felt hollow against stone and sky, for Zipili knew his role in these unfolding events was not one of godly descent, but that of human responsibility, or heavy mantle wrapped around a shoulder carved by history's relentless chisel. With every step he took among the ruins where once mighty priests had stood before him, Zipili felt their legacy intertwined with his own uncertain future, for as much as they drew strength from above, so too must this child of Tenochtitlan find balance amidst earthly realms. The city was a mirror reflecting both the majesty and follies of human endeavor, a place where divine might had once guided their hand until ambition blinded them to the ephemeral nature of power, leaving behind relics as testament not only to forgotten gods, but also lost wisdom in understanding one's role within creation's grand tapestry. The night brought forth a coolness that seemed almost gentle against his skin, for every fear and doubt he carried was momentarily eased by the embrace of starlight, or silent witness above, who had seen empires rise from ashes to reach toward eternity before succumbing once more, leaving behind only whispers in their wake. Zipili realized that while his voice might not command storms or calm seas any longer than it could inspire hearts and minds towards unity with the world around them, Zipili closed his eyes for a moment and let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding in. The cool night air caressed him gently, as if whispering secrets of old and ancient lullaby that seemed to resonate with the very core of his being. As darkness settled around him like velvet drapes over an empty stage, a soft wind stirred through Tenochtitlan's remnants and playfully tugged at Zipili's cloak. It was as if nature herself beckoned for him to uncover the mysteries that lay hidden in plain sight among these sacred ruins, stories etched not just on stone, but deeply ingrained within his own spirit, a legacy of resilience and reverence passed down through generations like an heirloom. He took another deep breath as memories flooded back to him, how the city had once pulsed with life, or metropolis that hummed in harmony with its heartbeat. Waterways, temples dedicated not just to gods, but also humanity itself, markets teeming where ideas were exchanged and wisdom was bartered. Tenochtitlan's grandeur lay nestled among the stars. Each night they had celebrated their connection to both divine forces above and earthly realms beneath with dances as intricate as spider-web patterns on dew-covered leaves, a testament to balance between all things that were seen and unseen. As Zipili walked amidst crumbled columns where priests once stood commanding the attention of their people, he felt an invisible thread weaving through time, a tapestry so vast it encompassed not only his ancestors' triumphs but also their downfalls. A civilization that had reached for heavens and sunk into shadows with equal ease. Amidst these stone giants of ambition, he sensed the whispers of ancient wisdom about to be passed on once more, an understanding rooted in humility before nature's immutable will. The night sky above Tenochtitlan was a cosmic map etched into memory. Each star had witnessed countless stories untold, echoing back through Zipili's lineage with every heartbeat and breath. He took her celestial compass guiding his path. He realized that the strength of Tenochtitlan's legacy was not in its towering spires or grand temples, but rather in these silent witnesses above, as they had seen civilizations flourish only to wither into memory like leaves in autumn's final surrender to winter's chill. Zipili paused before an altar long forgotten by the world beyond Tenochtitlan's sacred ground, its surface still warm from his father's touch, a connection so tangible that it seemed as if he could reach out and feel its history pulse through him like blood coursing in veins. The air here was thick with remnants of offerings once made to gods whose faces had faded into myth, The altar stood guard over untold stories, waiting for one who might piece together their whispers back into a chorus echoing down from antiquity's dorm. As he traced his fingers along weather-beaten stone carvings of deities and mortals alike entwined in eternal dance as celebration that transcended the mere act of worship, Cipilli felt an old yearning awaken within him, a desire to reclaim lost harmony with nature's rhythms. Each symbol was not just artistry, but knowledge encoded into sacred geometry. Each line carved upon this altar spoke in silent tones about respecting the natural order that had once been Tenochtitlan's lifeblood, a reverence for creation itself before ambition blinded man to its fragile balance. He pondered how his own journey mirrored these ancient stones. Each step through life was both an act of remembrance and discovery. Every decision had ripples that echoed into the fabric of Tenochtitlan's history, a legacy he bore as responsibility to honor by living in accordance with nature's lessons. The fall from grace wasn't just political but philosophical, or descent made possible when humanity forgot its place within this grand tapestry and sought dominion, where humility should have reigned supreme. Cipilli's heart ached for a time before the city had succumbed to darkness, not merely in shadows cast by conquerors' swords, but also through ignorance of one's place within this world, or separation from divinity that was once embraced as unity with all existence. In Chapter 5 of our tale woven through time and memory, we find Cipilli standing at Tenochtitlan's ancient steps once more, the sacred place where he had so often sought solace in his youth. The sun dipped lower on the horizon now, casting a warm golden glow across the ruins that stood defiantly against the encroaching night and decay of centuries past. Cipilli felt its touch upon his skin, as if to remind him of days when such light was not just seen, but cherished deeply within every heartbeat of this city's people, their joy a reflection in Tenochtitlan's very essence itself, before the great calamity had stolen it away. As he traced his fingers over the moss-covered stones that were once revered with offerings and prayers for bountiful harvests and blessings of rain, Cipilli could not help but reflect on what those symbols represented in their fullness. Knowledge etched into every curve spoke volumes to him now as he stood alone amidst these echoes. They told stories beyond mere artistry. They whispered the wisdom that had once been at Tenochtitlan's core, a testament of reverence for all creation and an understanding so profound it seemed otherworldly in its depth and balance between mankind's needs and Mother Earth's offerings. Each symbol here was not merely a representation, but also instruction. Every line drawn on this sacred ground had been meticulously crafted to teach the importance of living harmoniously with nature, for it gave life as well as took away when respect faltered. Cipilli remembered those lessons vividly, etched into his soul like these symbols were engraved upon Stonehenge's every decision from then until this very night had reverberated through Tenochtitlan's history and been felt across its people's lives, as if he too was a part of the natural order itself. But with time, ambition blurred his vision. It seduced him into thinking man could command nature to kneel before them in servitude, a belief that had led Tenochtitlan astray and brought about its fall from grace. The city's prideful descent was not just one of political power, but a philosophical downfall, when the very teachings he once held dear were forgotten amidst conquest's greed for dominion, where humility should have prevailed in reverence to their gods and ancestors alike. The night enveloped Cipilli's heart as tears welled up, a sorrowful remembrance of the unity that once was, when every soul had felt close enough to touch divinity itself, without a chasm between them. It seemed like an era lost in time, where humanity did not sever their bond with nature but danced together within its rhythm. He ached for those days before darkness befell Tenochtitlan, not merely the physical shadow cast by conquerors' swords, nor just ignorance that led to disconnection from spiritual routes. It was a profound separation when divinity had become an abstraction in one's life rather than lived as unity. In his yearning for those times, and with this awakening of soul-deep sorrow within him, Cipilli felt the call once again to heal what time could not mend. He resolved to seek out Tenochtitlan's hidden truths that lay buried under layers of history and conquerors' influence. Only by unearthing these forgotten teachings might mankind grasp at redemption, learning anew from the past without repeating its mistakes before him, as well to restore harmony with nature in all things. He envisioned himself standing again upon those sacred steps of Tenochtitlan under a sky clear and bright once more, his heart beating not just for personal reconciliation, but also hoping to reignite the communal spirit that had been extinguished by darkness or flame he was determined to carry forward, with each silent step back towards those ancient stones of wisdom carved from nature itself. Cipilli felt a renewed purpose stirring within his bones. It whispered in hushed tones with the rustling leaves that danced under moonlight's watchful eye, and some through the murmuring streams whose paths were etched by time into Tenochtitlan's heart. He would not allow ambition to blind mankind again, nor forget their place within this grand cosmic dance between sky, earth, water, and life itself, for balance once honored in every aspect of existence before the fall from grace that had brought about such great suffering for all generations following his own. Now, with each breath drawn into being filled as Cipilli traversed through time-worn pathways that intertwined like the roots beneath his feet, each step was imbued with purpose, a reconnecting to ancestral wisdom, and an invitation for all who followed in footsteps after him to also seek understanding from these sacred stones. He reached out towards those ancient edifices of knowledge, their facades, whether worn yet unmistakably resilient as ever before the fall that had scattered seeds of discord through his people's ways and into history's tapestry, downfall born from hubris and disconnection with earthly rhythms. Within these hallowed remnants Cipilli sought echoes of communal unity, for he knew that the essence within them held not just answers to his people's suffering, but also keys to their spiritual rebirth or reawakening from beneath layers of conquest and loss where spirits once danced freely with nature. He paced along cobbled streets, listening intently as whispers seemed to emanate from every corner. The voices spoke not just his thoughts aloud, but also louder for all who yearned the call back to a time when Tenochtitlan was cradled by nature's hands, and spirits were kin. Cipilli paused before grand plazas where once stood gatherings of vibrant souls sharing laughter as richly abundant as the crops that fed their populace, or society bound in mutual respect for all elements from which they drew life's essence: earth, water, air, and fire. He traced his fingers along engraved patterns within stonework of temples dedicated to celestial deities who watched over the dance between sun and moon with unwavering benevolence, their balance once mirrored in Tenochtitlan's heartbeat before it faltered under external shadows. Within these sacred walls Cipilli felt a stirring of communal spirit long forgotten. He sensed the faintest hum that resonated with his own aspirations, or melody composed by ancients whose wisdom flowed through generations but had been silenced for too long. He met individuals from every walk of life who looked upon him as a beacon, their hopeful eyes reflecting centuries-old yearnings to reclaim that connection which once defined them. Unity with the land and sky seemed possible again within his reach, or dream he was determined not just to cherish but also share. As nightfall approached, while Cipilli walked through Tenochtitlan's heart, lamps flickered on as if in greeting of a returning hero whose spirit aimed to rekindle the communal flame extinguished by darkness or light he had sworn never to see dim again. He arrived at sacred steps once more under canopy skies that now glowed with promise. Cipilli stood alone, enveloped in tranquillity and strengthened resolve, as if the very air conspired in his silent triumph over history's burdensome testament to mankind's resilience. Here, at these steps, where time seemed an abstract concept before now felt so tangibly real again, Cipilli looked down upon Tenochtitlan, whose heartbeat had been synchronized with nature itself for millennia, and yet fell silent in the wake of conquest, or silence he was resolved to end. He spoke softly but firm words into night's embrace. Let us rise anew from these sacred stones that have borne witness across ages. Let our hearts echo with purpose as we reforge bonds between mankind and the earth beneath their feet, or symphony of coexistence. With each word, Cipilli felt a bridge being built in his own spirit to span time's chasm that separated him from an era when Tenochtitlan thrived as one with nature. He understood now more than ever the importance of walking forward hand in hand. As stars began their nightly vigil, Cipilli turned towards homeward, his mission clear: to spread this flame that had begun within his own soul through every heart in Tenochtitlan and beyond, until as Cipilli's voice faded into silence with his words hanging in the air like dew on morning leaves, an unusual tranquillity settled upon Tenochtitlan's once vibrant plaza city that had danced harmoniously to nature's rhythm for ages. The very night seemed alive, as if listening intently and nodding its head gently in assent. The stars shimmered with a brighter intensity, reflecting Cipilli's fervent spirit back into his solar mirror of hope amidst echoes of conquest that had silenced many before. The following daybreak painted new colors upon Tenochtitlan's visage as its denizens arose from their homes like flowers, greeting the sun after a long night. Their faces, though marred by time's relentless march and foreign influences alien to ancient ways of life, bore an unmistakable spark of shared resolve that had been stoked within Zipili's heart fire during his nocturnal call for unity against the backdrop of a sky adorned with celeste 0839 words for 562 as Zipili's voice faded into silence with his words hanging in the air like dew on morning leaves. An unusual tranquillity settled upon Tenochtitlan's once vibrant plaza, city that had danced harmoniously to nature's rhythm for ages. The very night seemed alive, as if listening intently and nodding its head gently in assent. The stars shimmered with a brighter intensity, reflecting Zipili's fervid spirit back into his solar mirror of hope amidst echoes of conquest that had silenced many before. The following daybreak painted new colors upon Tenochtitlan's visage as its denizens arose from their homes like flowers, greeting the sun after a long night. Their faces, though marred by time's relentless march and foreign influences alien to ancient ways of life, bore an unmistakable spark of shared resolve that had been stoked within Zipili's heart fire during his nocturnal call for unity against the backdrop of a sky adorned with celestial bodies. Chapter 8. The Call to Unity and Renewal in Tenochtitlan. The first light touched upon Aztec faces, revealing depth within their eyes that had been molded by years yet never extinguished at a reflection of the sun's own resilience. Children scampered about with vibrant feathers adorning their heads and bodies, while adults shared stories infused with wisdom from generations past, tales not even Zipili had heard before. Each narrative carried a seed that could blossom into understanding between two worlds in conflict in alien land across the ocean. It was within these hushed conversations underneath ancient trees that whispers of change began to stir like morning mist upon water, mingling with Zipili's determined breath as he prepared for another night's call. Zipili had always been a conduit between realms, spirit and flesh. His very essence was born from the sacred waters where gods would dance in revelry under moonlight, or city built to echo their divine presence. Tenochtitlan stood proudly atop an island forged by hands both earthbound and ethereal. It had been a time of prosperity when Zipili first appeared. Now it was the era of encroaching shadows seeking dominion over verdant lands, unknown and unwelcome harbinger that arrived on ragged sails, bearing with them weapons foreign to Tenochtitlan's people and their belief in harmony. Despite this threat looming like a storm cloud overhead, Zipili's resolve hardened. He knew the strength of his city lay not just within its formidable walls, but also in united, unbreakable threads that bound all hearts together with shared purpose and destiny. That night, under star-studded heavens where once conquest had brought despair, Zipili called out to every soul gathered around him, "Tonight we must stand as one, for the future of Tenochtitlan rests in our unity. This land is a sacred gift not just from gods, but also kin." His voice rose and fell like waves upon ancient shores, gentle yet persistent. The people listened with bated breath as he spoke of alliances that could fortify their city against the tide, emphasizing respect for different ways while celebrating shared values at its core, reverence to gods whose voices had guided them since time immemorial, and love for a home where spirits roamed freely among humanity. As Zipili's words lingered in the plaza, ere before dissolving into silence, an understanding seemed to bloom within each heart, a realization that Tenochtitlan's soul was indestructible as long as its people stood firm together against division and fear of other cultures. With newfound determination glinting like morning dew on the city's flowers, they pledged themselves to protect their home with courage born from unity, or testament that would echo through time even when empires crumbled beneath foreign feet or faded into myth as stories told around ancient firesides for generations. The sun's first ray kissed Zipili's cheek, worn and bright like hope itself. He knew his voice could not command the world, but perhaps it had ignited a flame in Tenochtitlan that would burn eternally, a beacon of resilience guiding them through times darkened by fear. As he prepared to rest within his hallowed temple, surrounded by relics imbued with spiritual energy and wisdom within his hallowed temple, Zipili found solace as he settled down amongst relics that hummed with spiritual energy and wisdom. His mind still echoed back to this moment of unity in Tenochtitlan's plaza, when every heart had pledged itself together against division or commitment forged not just by stone, but also through shared belief, respectfulness towards different customs while honoring their collective devotion and cultural heritage. The warmth from the first ray of sun on his face felt like hope's embrace as he reflected upon how these ideals might endure beyond empires that once towered over them but now stood only in whispers within ancient firelight stories shared by elders to wide-eyed children, teaching resilience and reverence for times when fear cast long shadows. The temple walls bore witnesses of past generations who had upheld the same values that Cipilli cherished, taught their lineage stretching back through ages, where gods were not just myths but integral to their identity, a connection deeply etched into every cobblestone and blooming flower. As he gazed upon these testaments of faith embedded in his sacred space, with reverence, the notion that Tenochtitlan's soul was indestructible lingered within him like an Anwar 01/X85 Babel fragrance amidst its dense humidity, a scent infused by every prayer whispered and offering made. On this day Cipilli decided that the temple would become not just a place of worship but also a sanctuary for all who sought guidance on navigating their shared existence with other cultures without succumbing to fear or prejudice, a refuge where unity in diversity was practiced as naturally and harmoniously as birdsong at dawn. He envisioned gatherings within the temple walls that would unite Tenochtitlan's people, fostering dialogues steeped in empathy while celebrating their distinct traditions alongside shared values, or communal garden where ideas could blossom into understanding and respect for all forms of life. In his heart grew a plan to commission artworks that captured the essence of Tenochtitlan's spirit. Murals painted with vivid stories portraying historical alliances, tales of gods blessing their endeavors through unity rather than conquest, and depictions of harmonious coexistence where spirits danced among humans as guardians, or visual narrative that would inspire even those who had forgotten the old ways. These artworks were to be crafted by skilled hands from within his community, but also invited artists beyond their borders if they shared Tenochtitlan's reverence for gods and respect towards different cultures, hoping it might become a new tradition where creativity flourished as an ode to unity itself. Late into the night, before Cipilli retired from his thoughts of tomorrow's endeavors within today's temple walls, he pondered upon inviting neighboring city-states likes who had once been fearful adversaries, but now could benefit greatly by learning Tenochtitlan's ways. By sharing their own customs and engaging in mutual celebrations of gods that reverberated across the region like a chorus, they might sow seeds for alliances not just based on power or survival against threats, but also founded upon respectful exchange between civilizations, or tapestry woven from threads diverse yet beautifully unified. As he traced his fingers along engraved symbols of water and earth that lined the temple's altar, Cipilli made a silent vow to himself. Tenochtitlan would become an example for all surrounding lands, or beacon where fear was not just absent, but replaced by understanding. He dreamt of days when children across these regions might recount tales no longer marred with division or conflict, but painted in strokes that celebrated shared humanity, a future he felt deeply rooted to nurture through every act and word spoken within the temple's embrace, a legacy forged from unity as strong as obsidian. In his heart, Cipilli knew this journey was not an end, but just another chapter in their ongoing tale where Tenochtitlan stood resilient amidst ebbing empires and fading mythologies. A testament that within the temple's walls and beyond its influence into every corner of society, the soul of his beloved city would continue to resonate with reverence for gods, respect towards different ways of life, love for shared values, courage in unity against division or fear of other cultures. As he drifted off amidst whispers of prayers, and as Cipilli gazed upon the city of Tenochtitlan from atop its grandest pyramid, he felt a profound connection to every stone and path that led him here, a place where his heart beat in unison with the ancient pulse of an empire. The next chapter unfolds under velvet skies as dusk settles upon Tenochtitlan like a gentle cloak, its vibrant colors muted into twilight hues, and Cipilli descends to continue his work within the temple's sacred chambers. The city lay at rest beneath him, a sleeping giant made of earth as fertile as hope itself, and yet it stirred with possibilities whispered through its market 0W laden streets, where merchants and travelers alike exchanged stories and goods in equal measure, weaving a rich tapestry that transcended mere commerce. Zipili knew his journey was but one of many threads within this larger designer pattern. He endeavored to follow with humility, as the high priest's mantle rested upon him by divine providence. Inside the temple, candles flickered like fireflies in a meadow just beyond twilight. Their light danced across intricately carved murals depicting gods and mortals, uniting a visual testament to Zipili's vow made amongst engraved symbols of water and earth. It was here, amidst the convergence of spirituality and daily existence, that his purpose found its true calling, for he had not sought power, but service in harmony with Tenochtitlan's ethos, or city where every soul contributed to a collective well-being as sacredly significant as their most hallowed rituals. Throughout the night, Zipili consulted ancient texts that chronicled wisdom from before his own time. He sought guidance in understanding how one civilization could engage with others without losing its identity, how to be a bridge of respect and empathy across cultural divides. The words spoke not only of spiritual connection, but also emphasized the strength found within shared experiences, asserting that true leadership was nurturing trust among all peoples while honoring individual heritages, like distinct melodies in an anthem for unity. As he pondered these teachings by candlelight's last flicker before daybreak, Zipili felt a sense of kinship with the countless hands that had once raised offerings within this very temple, hands from every corner of Tenochtitlan and beyond its shores. He envisioned his people as gardeners tending to an expansive grove where diverse flora coexisted in symbiotic beauty, each plant's uniqueness celebrated for contributing vitality to the collective whole, or vision he wished all lands could embrace. The following days saw Zipili traveling across Tenochtitlan and neighboring realms with a heart open as an inviting sky. His mission was clear: foster dialogue, share knowledge of sustainable practices learned from the earth itself, or wisdom passed down through generations but often overlooked in greed's shadow. He introduced concepts such as crop rotation and aqueduct innovations that benefited communities by reducing waste while ensuring their bounty was not taken for granted, mirroring Tenochtitlan's own relationship with the land from which it sprang forth, a communion of giving back more than taking. On his journey to distant lands beyond Chinembers and causeways that crisscrossed Lake Texcoco's embrace, he encountered Peops, who had once been allies but now stood divided by misperception or fear-driven conflicts, or stark contrast to the harmony Tenochtitlan cherished. Yet through patient words and demonstrations of mutual respect for each culture's richness, Zipili sowed seeds that would one day blossom into unity, where differences no longer divided but enriched as vibrant flowers in a shared garden's heart, or dream he aspired to make reality. Throughout this pilgrimage of connection and learning, the tales told by hearthfires became mirrors for Zipili's own story. His experiences were imparted with sincerity as children gathered around him in awe, their eyes reflecting visions not just of themselves, but also those beyond Tenochtitlan's reach, or tapestry expanding ever wider to embrace all humankind. In these moments when stories traversed borders and epochs alike, the high priest witnessed love's power in its purest form, a belief that as night cloaked Tenochtitlan in velvet darkness, children from various tribes gathered around him with wide-eyed wonder and open hearts, or congregation reflecting a spectrum as diverse yet harmonious as the cosmos above them. Their innocent faces were mirrors of curiosity that Zipili aimed to fill not just with stories but experiences. His purpose transcended mere narration, reaching for understanding in its purest form. "Tell us again," pleaded a young boy named Tilali, "of the people whose lands you visited." With each word he spoke of distant horizons and unfamiliar customs. Zipili felt himself drawing closer to the mad pilgrimage within as profound as his physical travel. As tales flowed from one generation to another, sharing histories not just among themselves, but across continents, through the vessel that was their reverent storyteller, a sense of unity blossomed like night-blooming cereus amidst Tenochtitlan's very own sacred garden, or symbol for all those gathered around him. The stories they shared were vessels in themselves. Each narrative thread spun from the looms of individual experiences became part of their collective consciousness, weaving a tapestry that draped over every shoulder and wrapped comfortably about every heart present. The night deepened as Zipili's tales danced around concepts of gratitude towards earth, or reverence born from observing the crop rotations ensuring bounty without waste, understanding their actions upon land mirroring those ancient practices he had witnessed afar on his journey through fields and villages. His words were seeds sown in fertile soil, tales that sprouted empathy towards each other's ways of life, while acknowledging the uniqueness inherent within every tradition or harmony found not despite differences, but because they stood side by side, like diverse flora nurturing a shared ecosystem. In distant times, Zipili continued as he spoke softly into the night air laced with dreams and reveries, there was once conflict born from misconception or shadow that veiled understanding. He recounted tales of camaraderie shattering to discord. However, these stories now served a different purpose. They were not just recollections, but lessons in resilience as they unfolded into narratives about healing and reconciliation. Tilali's mother, Atiuatl, listened intently, a once skeptical heart, opening like the petals of a blossom under morning dew to Zipili's truthful accounts that bridged worlds with respect for individuality and collective responsibility towards Mother Earth. Her people were not just subjects in stories, but protagonists whose actions could inspire change, a realization dawning upon her as vividly as the sun's first ray piercing nighttime obscurity, promising renewal. The children around them whispered among themselves about a world where every soul contributed to its prosperity and beauty, their youthful optimism unfurling like firm fronds in spring's embracer belief that unity could be cultivated from the fertile ground of understanding, respect for diversity. In this sacred circle, under moonlight's watchful gaze, Tenochtitlan was but one heartbeat within a pulsing worldwide chest, where every beat resonated with shared dreams and aspirations. As dawn approached to claim its dominion over night's realm once more, Zipili felt the weight of his mission heavy on his shoulders, her pilgrimage that sought not only personal enlightenment, but also societal transformation through stories told heart to heart under starlit skies. The children's eager eyes held reflections of a future where cultural divides would transform into mosaics, each shard contributing to an image grander than the sum of its parts, a world cradled in understanding and compassion as Tenochtitlan's very own high priest witnessed love weave through every conversation like golden threads binding in chapter 12 of our tale under Tenochtitlan's watchful moon and stars. Zipili, heart pounding, with purpose yet mind clear as a mountain spring, turned his thoughts back to where it all began, to that fateful night when the echoes first whispered through the corridors. The ancient city had been awash in colors more vibrant than any seen before. Festivities filled every corner and crevice of Tenochtitlan's proud self-built marvel, its grand temples adorned with featherwork resembling celeste zero-out patterns across the night sky. It was then that Zipili had felt his call to weave a new narrative into the tapestry of history and culture that he held so dearly in Tenochtitlan's bosom, one which would resonate far beyond its sacred waters and stone-clad pyramids. His voice carried across town squares as elders spoke, young ones listened with rapt attention, storytellers, gift flowing through his veins just as the life-giving water flows from Tenochtitlan's very own Chinamper's to nourish its people and earth alike. The journey that awaited him was not of land or sea, but within hearts, minds, and spirits across a world he had yet to tread upon, a pilgrimage fueled by the belief in unity's power as much for personal growth as it was for societal transformation through storytelling. And so Zipili found himself standing before the temple of Tezcatlipoca on an evening when twilight kissed daylight farewell, his heart a drumbeat echoing with tales yet untold and worlds not yet discovered, but vividly imagined in every child's eyes. As he embarked upon this quest, the sacred cacti atop Tezcatlipoca's temple stood sentient sullen witnesses to his resolve as their spines glistened like stars under moonlight's caress. With a heart full of reverence and hands that held stories untold, Zipili began with Tenochtitlan, the city where he had grown up among tales, told atop grand pyramids, or narrative born from his people's profound connection to nature which whispered through every stone. He spoke of their reverence for Pachamama and how each action in her name carried immense significance, stories that painted the past with hues brighter than any gem found within Tenochtitlan's vibrant markets, tales where crops were grown not just as sustenance, but a testament to humanity's symbiotic relationship with earth. The people of Tenochtitlan swayed in unison, a dance born from understanding the threads that bound them to this living world and every soul within it, their movements echoing through temple halls, reverberating off walls, sculptured by artisans who themselves were inspired by nature's eternal palette. Zipili continued his journey with tales of unity as essential for a prosperous society or vision where differences in belief and tradition enriched the collective tapestry rather than unravel it, weaving threads into stories that celebrated each unique hue within Tenochtitlan's diverse community. His words painted pictures of children trading shell ornaments with neighbors from distant lands as a symbolic gesture towards peaceful exchange and mutual respect, a world where the artistry in their eyes depicted not just shared dreams but also an unwar ability to see themselves beyond mere subjects within stories into protagonists capable of forging change. He spoke next under breath about Tenochtitlan's temples as sanctuaries and places of learning, places where knowledge was passed down through generations like a sacred flame in the hearth at nightfall when families gathered to share wisdom imparted by elders, tales that spanned from creation myths told with reverence to ancestral histories sung into being. As he journeyed beyond Tenochtitlan's borders through his stories, Zipili dreamt of a world where cultural divides faded like mist under the sun's embrace, and every heart was open as the sky above, a place not just for understanding but for compassion to thrive. He imagined children from distant lands who once knew only their own traditions now learning songs sung by Tenochtitlan's people that spoke of respecting all living things. He dreamed stories where every individual felt like a vital part of an ever-evolving narrative, their storyteller's fantasy becoming the sea. As chapter 12 drew to a close and Zipili's tales ebbed into tranquil silence, his listeners found themselves enveloped in visions of an interconnected world where horizons stretched beyond sight yet always felt within grasp, a realm that danced delicately between reverie and aspiration. Chapter 13 began with the first light touching upon Zipili's temple, awakening not just his spirit, but also kindling a fire in those who gathered around him to hear tales of yore under its embracer symbolical dawn that promised new understanding while honoring ancient traditions. Tenochtitlan continued as the heartland where Zipili's stories flowed freely, like water through time's meandering pathways connecting past and future in a serene stream of consciousness. Here was an ageless city whose very air vibrated with life, a place where every stone had been kissed by countless generations before him who etched their dreams into the walls, leaving echoes that whispered through time whenever one dared to listen closely enough. One evening, as twilight's gentle fingers swept across Tenochtitlan's expanse of land and water, Zipili stood upon a hillock overlooking this confluence where civilizations once mingled, or place now reclaimed by nature yet still remembered in the collective memory. He saw beyond mere stones that lay forgotten. He heard their stories as if they were etched into his very soul and felt them pulsate within him, becoming part of a grand narrative larger than any one person's lifespan could contain. It was here where Zipili began to weave tales not just about the city itself, but also its people, their hearts' yearnings for peaceful coexistence and shared prosperity that transcended borders, their spirits intertwined with those who came from distant shores under auspicious skies. He spoke of a time when foreign traders arrived bearing gifts not just in goods, but as bearers of hope or vision, where the world's cultures were threads woven into one rich tapestry that celebrated diversity yet embraced unity. As he narrated, his audience was drawn deeper and further back through time to a grand market square teeming with life beneath an indigo sky punctuated by twinkling stars, an eternal dance of commerce, where not wealth but mutual respect flowed like water between traders from lands afar. Children played in the dust, laughter melding languages as they exchanged shell ornaments and tales that transcended mere play. These moments were sacred bridges built on friendship's foundation, or testament to a world where differences could be celebrated, not just tolerated, but treasured like jewels. Zipili spoke of the temples, those hallowed sanctuaries under which knowledge was cherished and nurtured as tenderly as seeds in fertile soil. Here, learning became an act of devotion or sacred duty to preserve wisdom that had been passed down through whispered stories told by firelight. The elders' faces bore the creases of a life lived fully, eyes brimming with secrets and histories untold yet eagerly shared as if they were precious gems bestowed upon willing ears, or legacy not just remembered but revered in every heartbeat that echoed through time's endless halls. His tales now carried him beyond the familiar boundaries of Tenochtitlan into realms where rivers sang and mountains bowed to honor those who journeyed with respectful hearts, a world unmarred by greed or hatred, but graced instead by compassion that flowed freely. He described a place where children learned not just the artistry of their own culture's craftsmanship, like pottery and featherwork intricately interwoven with symbols of strength and resiliency, but also skills from distant lands brought forth in bounty, as if by divine hand, to meld into one harmonious melody. In this new world he envisioned, Cipilli saw himself no longer simply a storyteller, but an ambassador for peace, his tales sowing seeds of understanding that would sprout across vast distances and disparate piazza bridge spanning the chasms between cultures built not with stone or mortar, but with words woven from empathy's thread. He spoke passionately about rivers once feared, now embraced as life-givers, that connected rather than divided, mountains revered for their might yet yielding to none other's claim or planet, where nature and humankind thrive. In chapter 14 of our tale, Cipilli found himself standing before a vast congregation gathered at the edge of Lake Texcar Place, where histories converged and futures were born under skies painted with hues that mirrored his deepest convictions. The air was charged not just by anticipation, but also by reverence for an ancient art form, one as old as time itself. Storytelling intertwined seamlessly with the rhythmic cadences of a shared heartbeat or communion where each syllable and pause sculpted realities yet to unfold. It was here that Cipilli unveiled his grandest vision, one painted in strokes broad enough for even those who had never beheld such wonders, as he spoke it into being, a global tapestry of cultures, so intricately connected through the threads of understanding and empathy, as if guided by celestial hands that spun tales across continents. His voice danced from one ear to another with an ease born not just out of practice, but divine inspiration. The congregation listened in rapt silence as he painted pictures so vivid they seemed tangible, a world where the rivers flowed not between nations, but within souls, bearing gifts rather than grievances. Mountains did more to elevate humanity's spirit towards each other than assert dominance. Here was a vision of nature and civilization living as one organism, pulsing with life in unison yet diverse expressions, or symphony led by the conductor Cipilli himself, whose tales became not just stories but lessons that reached beyond his own people to touch hearts across all walks of existence. The elders among them nodded solemnly. Their wise eyes sparkled as they considered this bold new world where no child was taught fear or hate through the examples set by history's darker chapters, but instead resilience and unity in every lesson crafted from life's loom. The youth amongst Cipilli gazed upon him with a blend of reverence and hope, or testament to his promise that they would inherit not just artifacts or landmarks as markers of legacy, but an ethos rooted deeply within their shared humanity, passed down through tales told under the watchful eyes of spirits who had always seen beyond mere surveyable. As he spoke, Cipilli's words seemed to conjure a breeze that wound its way around each listener, a gentle reminder not just of what might be, but also an invitation for them all to become co-creators in the unfolding narrative of their world and beyond. He envisaged grand exchanges where potters from afar met with Aztec artisans, sharing techniques that would enhance each other's craftsmanship while honoring distinct traditions, or confluence resulting not merely in shared goods, but a blending of respect for all cultures represented. He spoke too of gardens where every bloom was as much from this side of the world's shores or that, and fruits whose flavors were unknown to any tongue until they touched lips here, in exchange transcending physical borders by feeding souls with experiences once confined within their local soils. Cipilli's narrative took flight as he wove into his tapestry the story of a great river, long feared for its unpredictable nature, but now seen through fresh ice, or lifeblood that nurtured civilizations on either side of its banks and beyond, if only people would learn to honor it with gratitude rather than exploit. As he wove these threads into his tales, a collective understanding blossomed like the marigolds surrounding them. This was not just storytelling, but an act of sowing seeds that could flourish in rich soil cultivated by empathy and unity, or legacy transcending time. And so as daylight waned into dusk, Cipilli's stories seemed to echo through the very essence of Lake Texcoco itself. Their resonance felt not just within his own community, but in every heart that had ever lived or would come after a legacy honored and revered. In this moment, beneath shared skies, on a day seemingly ordinary, Cipilli stood as an ambassador for peace, having sown seeds of understanding whose roots promised to interlace the very fabric of human existence across time's expanse, binding hearts with threads dipped in tales spun not just from words but woven through love and respect. With a final glance at those gathered around him, her congregation now transformed into an assembly of dreamers united by visions, shared under the banner of compassionate human once upon a time in Lake Texcoco, nestled amidst ancient civilizations whose echoes whispered through its waters, lived Zippelir, keeper of tales and weaver of peace between cultures as diverse as they were interconnected by the life-giving lake. His stories had long been passed down orally under starlit skies, but tonight felt different. It was like a prelude to an age where words could transcend time itself, sowing seeds in fertile minds ready for understanding and empathy's nurturing grasp. As the gentle ripples on Lake Texcoco lapped against the shore with each passing breeze, Zipili began his narrative under a crescent moon that shone like an amulet over them, a beacon of unity in their shared humanity. His voice was calm and rhythmic as he spoke of times when this sacred body of water had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, each ripple carrying with it stories not just of conquest, but also cooperation across lands divided by invisible lines drawn long before modern borders were etched into maps. He recounted how once upon a time his ancestors believed that Lake Texcoco itself held the spirits of their forebears, their hopes and dreams mingling with its currents like perfume diffused through misty air. It had been not just water, but wisdom, an elemental guardian to which they paid homage in rituals, offering gratitude as a testament that this lake was more than mere sustenance, it was the very essence of life itself for generations who called it home and beyond. In his tales emerged reflections on how other cultures had also revered their waters with equal fervor. From ancient China to sub-Saharan Africa, lakes were seen as cradles of civilizations or mirror reflecting humanity's reliance on nature's bounty. Zipili drew parallels between the interdependence his people shared with Lake Texcoco and that which existed across continents, where rivers like Nile nurtured ancient Egyptians, just as Mississippi had been pivotal for Native American tribes before European settlers arrived on their shores. As he spoke of these connections rooted in the acknowledgement of water's sacredness, a collected silence fell over his audience as their hearts attuned to this universal truth that flowed from Zipili's lips like liquid silver through clear streams into open minds. It was as if Lake Texcoco itself listened intently, its surface calm yet resonant with the depth of shared histories and a future where respect for nature could bind humanity closer together than ever before imagined. Through his stories, Zipili wove an intricate tapestry that depicted not only battles for over territorial dominion, but also moments when water had been bridges between hearts or common language spoken without words, where empathy flowed as freely and vitally as the lake itself. He described how people could learn from past misdeeds, recognizing exploitation of natural resources for selfish gains that led to conflicts now buried in history's sands like ancient civilizations themselves once did by Lake Texcoco's shores. And so Zipili urged his listeners, children and elders, gathered around the water's edge, their faces illuminated only by fireflies of light provided from nearby to honor this shared heritage with actions that spoke louder than any tale he could tell, to ensure Lake Texcoco remained a sacred haven where life thrived in harmony. He implored them not just as neighbors, but fellow custodians for the generations yet unborn, whose hands would one day tend these waters and keep alive its profound legacy of unity and mutual respect woven through centuries by those who revered it before him. As he concluded his stories with a heartfelt appeal to look beyond themselves towards others across oceans to see in each reflection upon the lake's surface, not division, but shared destiny intertwined like roots, beneath fertile ground felt hope blossoming within every soul present, that they might carry forth this legacy. A testament of cooperation and reverence for nature's gifts would ripple outward from their lips to echo across time's expanse, binding the hearts together in a bond stronger than any conquest or division ever could have achieved alone under skies shared by all humankind. In this moment, beneath Lake Texcoco, as daylight waned into dusk and stars began twinkling awake above them like ancient eyes watching over humanity, Zipili stood not just as Zipili's voice trailed off into a hushed reverence that seemed to meld with the night itself. He looked at his audience, at their faces etched not just by age, but also by shared experiences and dreams of continuity beyond their years in this sacred place. With gentle hands resting upon hearts young and old alike, he softly began a tale passed down through generations. It was the legend of Tlaloc, deity of rain, who blessed Lake Texcoco with bountiful harvests when his tears were shed for its people in times of need. Zipilli wove stories that danced between fact and mythology, and narrative so richly textured it could blanket the eyes shut against any intrusion from daylight's realm or night's sky above them, leaving minds adrift on a sea of collective memory where every listener was both participant and spectator. He spoke fondly of ancient festivals that celebrated not just survival but coexistence with nature itself, the rituals performed when Tlaloc's children were gathered to receive gifts from his bountiful hand-offerings, made so they might return, fertile as if touched by life-giving waters themselves. As he spoke of ancient times under a canopy, where stars guided journeys across the lake and its shores provided refuge for both mankind's footprints and nature's imprint upon their world, Zipilli painted images with his words that were as vivid to those listening as if each pictogram was carved into wet clay. He told of temples perched on the lakeshore where priests would stand in prayer for balance between humanity and gods, where offerings made from crops grown upon sacred land promised prosperity not just for themselves, but also extended to those who shared their hearths beyond these waters' embrace. The heart of Zipilli's tales was the interconnectedness felt among all beings that called Lake Texcoco home, a reminder through each word and pause he crafted, urging them not just as people bound by blood or history, but also linked in spirit to those who would come after, echoes of their existence rippling outward like waves upon the water's surface. It was here that Zipilli shared visions of unity, where every individual's role within this community mattered, and each act performed with intention could echo through generations as a living testament to respect for one another and Mother Nature alike. His stories flowed into the night air like sacred waters themselves, carrying them towards an imagined future that shimmered brightly in their collective consciousness, where shared destiny was intertwined with every breath of wind across Lake Texcoco's face and beneath its waves' depth. He described futures painted not just by the hands of those who lived, but also through choices made to be watering can or rainfall touch upon their lands, forging alliances as solid in spirit as any armor borne into battle, standing together against division that sought to tarnish this shared history. As he narrated tales where humanity learned from nature's wisdom and embraced harmony with her cyclostines of plenty when the lake's waters were generous in times of need, when its depth was felt in scarcity, yet never once did they succumb to discord or disrespect for their sacred home, Zipilli painted a vision, a future where every reflection upon Lake Texcoco's surface spoke not just of individual lives, but the collective soul stitched into this tapestry, where each person's existence wove threads that strengthened bonds and fortified against fractures as enduringly strong as obsidian blades forged in ancient fires. With his closing words, he left no doubt of what was to come, a world built upon the legacy they were creating for a shared humanity nurtured by respectful guardianship over Lake Texcoco, and its people's hearts remained ever present under their watchful eyes. As each storyteller's voice found solace in silence beneath the twinkling celestial gaze, Zipilli concluded his tales with an invocation to cherish this bond or pledge that every breath drawn upon Lake Texcoco's breeze was a promise for tomorrow and all days yet unseen. And so as night deepened its hold around them beneath the watchful stars of ancient ancestors, Zipilli's legacy remained in those who listened with their hearts. His stories became seeds sown into fertile ground or future, where every reflection upon Lake Texcoco's surface bore witness to unity and respect. Remember, Zipilli whispered as he finished weaving another tale into the hearts around him, our home is more than just land or water. It's where our spirits roam freely. A soft murmur of assent traveled through gathered onlookers, or collective breath drawn in unison to honor these words. In this chapter of Tales and Truths, a quiet transformation occurred within the listeners' souls as they understood their role not just at home, but also upon Earth itself. The stories echoed with ancestral voices that resonated across centuries. Each legend told by Zipilli was both an enduring memory from history and a prophecy of hope for what lay ahead in this shared journey through time. The night waned, Yet the tales did not cease to unfold under his guidance, until every eye reflected understanding or glow as luminous with them as Zipili's own eyes had been when he first stood before these guardians of heritage and legacy years ago on this same shoreline. One by one, each storyteller found solace in the silence that followed his tales, their voices now quiet but for heartbeats echoed against still water-surf testament to a pact made under starlight many summers past, when they first gathered around these very fires on nights such as this. As dawn approached, painting palettes of light across the horizon and whispering promises into morning's ear, Zipili spoke his final words. Our shared humanity is bound by more than blood. It's woven from respect for all life that calls Lake Texcoco its home. Tomorrow will be brighter if we carry these stories in our hearts. The people nodded with solemn agreement, their faces etched into the very stones of ancient temples and modern homes alike. Zipili's legacy was now a part of the vast sacred trust handed down through generations. As first light crested over Lake Texcoco, it illuminated not just water or land, but also hope reborn from tales as old as time itself. The chapter closed with an invitation to cherish this precious bond, for within the reflection of every fish that danced in Zipili's stories lay a promise and oath made by all who shared these waters and their heritage, echoing into eternity beneath starlit skies. As dawn crested over Lake Texcoco, it illuminated not just water, but also hope reborn from tales as old as time itself. The chapter closed with an invitation to cherish this precious bond, for within the reflection of every fish that danced in Zipili's stories lay a promise and oath made by all who shared these waters and their heritage, echoing into eternity beneath starlit skies. Chapter 18 Reflections on Tomorrow's Promise in the gentle embrace of sunlight that now kissed Lake Texcoco's surface, a new chapter began for all who had gathered around this sacred fire. It was an age-old tradition to share stories and wisdom as daybreak followed nightfall, or right where each tale wove itself into the fabric of their communal tapestry. Yet today's narrative would carry special weight in its conclusion, binding them closer under a shared humanity that transcended bloodlines. Zipili rose with solemn grace from his seat at the fire's edge and began to walk among those gathered and act as natural for him as breathing was for others. The people waited expectantly. They knew this would be no ordinary farewell, but a moment that marked both an ending and a beginning in their collective journey around life's cyclical nature. As I stand before you, Zipili started with the voice of one who had spoken beneath countless stars to many generations. Worth of kin, I am reminded that our connection here goes beyond this single gathering. He paused, looking into each face as if peering into a mirror reflecting his own soul. His gaze moved over them like water flowing downstream calmly and without rush or judgment. A young boy with eyes full of wonder interjected timidly but eager to learn more about the past. Zipili Kapar, what did you mean by a sacred trust? His voice was barely louder than whispers among ancient stones that bore witnesses not just through their silent, stony gaze. The storyteller chuckled softly as if sharing an inside joke with the wind itself before he answered earnestly, Our bond to this land and its creatures is sacred because we understand its delicate balance of giving and taking from Lake Texcoco. He paused again, allowing his words a chance to sink in. Every creature that swims beneath these waters depends on us. Every plant rooted upon the shore relies on our respect for their existence. He continued with an intensity born not just out of necessity, but reverence as well. We are stewards and guardians, tasked by nature itself to honor this trust. An elder woman, whose life's tale was etched in her wrinkles, nodded slowly, understanding the weight of his words, like layers upon a palimpsest of history unwritten, long before she drew breath, but now felt as if it resonated within her heartbeat. We are one with the lake, she murmured, and we must remember our pact to protect and cherish every part that calls this place home. Zipili's voice took on a gentle cadence as he began his story of Tenochtitlan to Aztec marvel upon Lake Texcoco. It was an era when the heartbeat of civilization pulsed through its grand city and life danced to the rhythm set forth by shared destiny. The morning sun is cast a golden haze over Tenochtitlan as it thrived in harmonious existence with Lake Texcoco. Marketplaces buzzed like hives of activity. Artisans crafted wares and traders exchanged goods, all the while sustaining themselves by fishing from these very waters that cradled their metropolis or city built upon water to mirror life's ebb and flow just as surely. Beneath this interconnectedness lay a profound respect for nature's delicate balance which each person in Tenochtitlan embodied through daily rituals. Not only did they ensure the lake remained clean, but also by honoring its deities with offerings and prayers to sustain their way of life. It was this very harmony that allowed them centuries ago for stories like Sypolis tales spun from truth about humanity's bondedness through Lake Texcoco to be passed down generations, tales not merely told but felt in the soul as if pulsating with ancient energies. As he spoke of Tenochtitlan and its people, his hands moved to mimic a fish in chapter 19 of our journey through time and tales. We find Zipili returning to his village after witnessing a grand festival in Tenochtitlan, a celebration that honored both land and water as life-sustaining forces. The festivities were lively. Drums echoed the heartbeat of their shared heritage while dancers swirled like leaves caught in an autumnal zephyr. A sight Zipili long had yearned to see for himself, but never could due to his scholarly pursuits confined within the hallowed walls of Tenochtitlan's grand library. As he arrived back home under the cloak of twilight's embrace and greeted by familiar faces, Zipili felt a profound sense of gratitude for these simple joys that came from such intricate connections with nature, stark contrast to his life spent among books rather than in bustling marketplaces. As the night deepened into its velvety blackness and stars began their silent vigil, Zipili would often retreat under the vast expanse of sky above Lake Texcoco that cradled Tenochtitlan so tenderly, a reminder to him not just as a scholar, but also as his true self. The lake's surface mirrored constellations unknown in their village skies, offering silent solace and inspiration for those who sought more than what met the eye within city walls or beyond Tenochtitlan's reach. Now sitting by its edge with a woven mat beneath him as his only bedding on this chilly eve, Zipili closed another day of learning from Aztec codices and pondered upon life's transient beauty reflected in Lake Texcoco body that sustained not just the physical needs, but also spiritual awareness. The lake was a place where stories flowed like water itself, tales told to children around campfires, recited by shamans during sacred ceremonies, and shared between elders as they passed on wisdom under its gazeful waters at dusk, when fishermen returned with their harvest of life's sustenance. The air carried the scent of water lilies mingling with smoke from recent offerings, an aroma that felt like homecoming to Zipili's, soul and mind alike in essence. He cherished deeply alongside memories of his grandfather sharing similar tales by their family hearth. These were stories not just about human triumph or tribulation, but the connection between people and this watery muse, which was as vital for life in Tenochtitlan as it had been when civilization itself first stirred from its cradle upon Lake Texcoco's shores eons ago. In his heart of hearts, Zipili knew that every ripple on the water's surface held a story yet to be told, or narrative woven by hands both skilled and unskilled in crafting destinies as diverse as Tenochtitlan's own populace. Artisans who carved from obsidian, weavers spinners of exquisite textiles that draped over the backs like second skin, or even those whose stories were told through dance. All narratives converged here at this very lake and reverberated into a collective memory shared by all Tenochtitlan's inhabitants, or communal legacy as deep and vast as Lake Texcoco itself, where life danced to the ancient rhythms of heartbeats synchronized with every pulse that ebbed through its depths. As he reflected on these tales underneath a tapestry of stars overhead, Zipili felt an insatiable hunger for more understanding, or thirst not just academic, but deeply personal and profoundly spiritual, tied to the very essence of existence as understood by those who lived with Lake Texcoco. And so he would sleep here among these waters that have heard generations whisper secrets only now entrusted unto him, his dreams soon filled with visions both ancient and alive, their continuous flowing narrative, where every droplet told a story of harmony between humanity's endeavors and nature's grace. With each passing day on Lake Texcoco's edge came the promise that these stories would continue to unfold, just as they had for centuries in this city upon water, a testament to an enduring civilization where every stone of Tenochtitlan's grand edifices and vibrant market squares spoke not merely of human ingenuity, but also a reverence towards the delicate balance with their environment. Zipili knew that these tales he had come across in his studies were more than just words on par. This morning, like many before it, found him seated in the grand hall atop Tenochtitlan's Zebulto, where he had been invited by a mysterious figure known only as the Keeper of Law, a hooded stranger with knowing eyes and hands that seemed to absorb wisdom from all around. The keeper led Zipili through the city's vaincer maze built upon canals crisscrossing beneath Tenochtitlan's grandeur. "Zipili," said the keeper in a voice as deep and resonant as Lake Texcoco herself, "today is pivotal for your journey into the heart of these tales." Zipili nodded eagerly, his scholar's mind already racing with anticipation. He knew this day would be unlike any other. They arrived at an unassuming Palanquin modest home surrounded by lush gardens, and a pond that mirrored the sky above perfectly on calm days like today. As they stepped inside, Zipili's senses were immediately assailed with scents of marigolds, herbs known for their spiritual significance in Mesoamerican culture, as heat from cooking fires mingling with sweet and earthy fragrances that seemed to pulse through the air. The keeper ushered him into a room lined with obsidian sculptures representing various deities, each carved as if alive themselves, in perpetual dance around flickering candlelights casting shadows on ancient texts sprawled out before them upon sacred stone platforms covered by intricately embroidered cushions. This was the sanctum of Neretivesser Place, where tales were not just told but lived and breathed through rituals, chants, and offerings made to honor those who had once whispered their secrets here as well. Within this sacred space, the keeper began with a tale of the founding Tenochtitlan, embodiment of strength and leadership that echoes through centuries past. Zipili listened intently to how each decision shaped not only politics but also spirituality within their society. As they spoke about reverence for earth, sky, and water deities alike whose favor was sought with offerings given upon every harvest, a reflection of the delicate balance between human ambition and nature's will that Tenochtitlan itself represented at its zenith. As daylight waned into twilight's embrace, the keeper shared tales interwoven with visions experienced by seers like himself, glimpses of future generations through the lens of sacred rituals performed upon Lake Texcoco's shores, where offerings were cast and prayers for guidance sent into its depths. Zipili felt as though he was traversing these waters in spirit, his heartbeats syncing with those who had lived by this lake before him, a connection that transcended time to a place beyond the grasp of ordinary understanding but within reach through faith's embrace. And then came the keeper's most guarded secret, an omen foretelling Tenochtitlan's eventual fall, as told by two seers who had seen spirits in their visions, warning that the city was not invincible against external threats and internal strife. Though unsettling to hear such prophecy, it brought Zipili back home with a humbling reminder of his role amidst these narratives. He felt an urgent responsibility now more than ever before to safeguard them for those who would come after him as Tenochtitlan faced its inevitable change. In the quiet hours that followed, surrounded by ancient wisdom and the keeper's cryptic counsel, Zipili returned to his quarters within a grand palace turned study or sanctuary, where he could ponder these revelations beneath flickering torches as night enveloped Tenochtitlan. As the moon climbed high above Lake Texcoco and stars etched their stories upon her silvery canvas, Zipili sat quietly in his chamber within Tenochtitlan's grandest palace turned study as night enveloped their magnificent city, which now seemed both timeless and fragile under a moonlit sky reflecting upon Lake Texcoco's tranquil waters. The soft glow of torches flickered against the rich tapestries that adorned his walls, a visual echo of stories he had yet to tell himself but felt compelled to share with those who would listen after him one day. The weight on Zipili's heart grew heavier as the keeper's words lingered in the air, their significance seeping into every fiber and thought within his being. With each syllable that passed through spoken wisdom or whispered secrets from beyond to those who dared listen closely enough during sacred rituals by the lake's edge, he felt a profound connection not only with the keeper, but also across generations of souls, linked inextricably to this place and its history. In his restless contemplation, under cover of darkness, Zipili revisited memorous laughter that once echoed through the corridors on festival nights as nobles danced beneath chinampas blooming with flowers. He heard them now in a somber tone, reminding him they would not dance forever. His ancestors had been warriors and scholars alike, whose stories of valor were interwoven into mythos, an amalgamation of reverence for gods like Huitzilopochtli, the deity after which their city was named, with beliefs rooted in cyclical renewals symbolized by sacred fires that had risen and fallen as seasons changed. As Zipili's mind drifted through these recollections of past festivities now long faded into legend, he remembered the vibrant market porches where merchants from distant lands brought exotic goods to Tenochtitlan's grand plaza spaces that could warm even the coldest heart, and textiles intricately woven with threads as colorful as life itself. It was here, too, in this hub of commerce, he had met women whose eyes spoke languages beyond his own tongue. Their stories were etched within him just like those on sacred codice tales that transcended mere words to become experiences lived and breathed by all who called the city home. The night deepened as Zipili contemplated the keeper's prophecy, his thoughts weaving through potential futures where Tenochtitlan might stand tall against invading forces or fall victim to internal discord, or future not of conquest but transformation, perhaps one that would see the city evolve beyond its original form. In these reflections on change and continuity, he felt a kinship with those who had navigated their own shifts in power, culture, and society over centuries past. They too had faced uncertain horizons, yet persevered to forge legacies that would endure through time's relentless flow. Such thoughts were often accompanied by the distant strains of harp strings or gentle plucking on a lyre, played during evenings when dusk painted hues across Tenochtitlan's skyline, an auditory backdrop to which his heart now swayed with melodies that spoke not just of present joys, but also echoes from an age where priests performed intricate rituals by the lake, seeking wisdom and guidance in nature's profound mysteries. Within these reverie-filled hours, Zipili came to understand his newfound duty to be a sentinel for history's essence within Tenochtitlan as it stood on this precipice of change. His role was no longer simply one of preservation, but also that of an educator who could help others see the world through eyes attuned to both its beauty and inherent fragility, guiding them towards a consciousness rooted in respect for all life's interconnected web, a truth evident now more than ever. As dawn's first light began to creep over distant mountains beyond Lake Texcoco, painting the horizon with strokes of gold and roseate blushes that signaled an end to nighttime musings, Zipili arose from his study's embrace. He felt a renewed sense of purpose that transcended personal ambition or desire for accolades within Tenochtitlan's society, as he envisioned himself sharing tales not only with posterity, but also in teaching others to look beyond the veil separating past, present, and future. Tonight's reflections led him back into his day as daylight began to seep through the awning of his study window. Zipili gently closed it with a soft sigh before he rose from his armchair on last time, that night filled with reflections on history and its teachings about unity amidst change. Draped in robes woven by artisans who understood their craft as both functional attire and tributes to the gods, Zipili made his way outside of Tenochtitlan's sacred precincts into a world that hummed with life's constant rhythm, yet also whispered tales from times long past. The air was still cool, but now carried hints of warmth as he walked through the bustling marketplace, where merchants hawked their wares and laughter danced alongside bartered goods in a harmonious cacophony that told its own story, a narrative woven with threads from every corner of Tenochtitlan's vast reach. Here were tales not just of trade, but also of human spirit, as strong bonds between people transcended the mere exchange of commodities. They shared dreams and fears alike in a place where community was treasured above all else. Zipili paused at an elderly craftswoman, whose intricate weavings told tales more complex than any written word, each pattern a testament to her skill passed down through generations, her legacy of artistry mirroring the city's own history and culture that Zipili sought diligently. He shared with her his visions for tomorrow's youth, imbued not only in tales, but also lessons drawn from these silent narratives woven into cloth. Respect, cooperation, sustainability, triptych of values he long hoped to instill within the hearts and minds that followed him. As midday sun reached its zenith over Lake Texcoco's expanse, Zipili made his way towards a secluded grove where scholars gathered under canopies thick with verdure, sanctuary for reflection amidst nature's embrace and conversation that shaped worldviews. Here he would speak of the city itself, how it rose from Tenochtitlan's Lake Moctezuma, its structures a marvel crafted by hands attuned to celestial harmonies, and urban symphony resonating with agricultural bounty and spiritual depth that mirrored life's intricate dance. The scholars listened intently as Zipili recounted the tales of their ancestors, how they revered not only the sun god, but also respected every creature within Tenochtitlan's bounds, a reflection on humanity itself and its place in a broader ecological context. He spoke passionately about his duty to act as guardian over this living history that flowed through veins like lifeblood, ensuring it remained uncorrupted by the winds of change threatening from without or within. Her heritage he believed each citizen should cherish and protect just as they would their own kin. As day transitioned into a time where shadows stretched long across cobblestone paths, Zipili returned to his study once more for an audience with the youth of Tenochtitlan's elite gathering not unlike those in which he had first found purpose years before. Here, amidst circles of eager minds and questioned souls, lay fertile ground from whence understanding could bloom like flora after rain-soaked earth, if only nurtured with care, with gentle guidance akin to that offered by the ancient priests beside Lake Texcoco's waters now long forgotten. But for his spoken words, Zipili shared stories of Tenochtitlan's resilience and adaptability in times before Spanish conquest had been its greatest strength, how it balanced prosperity with stewardship over nature's riches. He spoke not just as an orator gifted by the gods, but also a student for all, inviting questions that sparkled like stars, reflecting on still waters, their inquiries driving him to delve deeper into histories obscured yet ever present within their city's heartbeat. These conversations became his legacy as he sowed seeds of knowledge and respect for the past, encouraging young minds to connect with Tenochtitlan's culture not merely in festivals or art, but through every aspect that painted this living massacre city, where each stone held a memory waiting to be awakened. As twilight crept upon Zipili's time spent among the young, he felt an assurance deep within him, his role as sentinel for history in a place where time seemed to flow as gently and persistently as water downstream. Zipili continued his journey among the eager minds he had come across by chance in Tenochtitlan's grand Pyrzazar city of temples that reached towards heaven with unyielding stones. As dusk wrapped its arms around their daily lives like a comforting blanket and stars winked from above, Zipili felt compelled to gather the children once more underneath an ancient tree in Huitzilopochtli Parker, sacred grove where generations of storytellers had stood before him. This evening's meeting was different. It held a weight heavier than usual as he unraveled tales that danced around the edges of their youngest memories and aspirations, weaving together threads from history to touch upon notions of identity they could scarcely comprehend, but felt instinctively. He spoke softly about Tenochtitlan's great marketplace Tlatelolco, where people had bartered goods with the same fervor that colored their vibrant markets today, and how trade was essential for a city as grandiose yet intimate as this one they called home. Zipili shared stories of waterways like Kalmakak Lake or Place he fondly remembered from his own childhood, where the future's priests had honed their craft amidst reflections that mirrored ambitions and dreams alike. He spoke not only to entertain, but also as a bridge spanning years between past glories and present struggles. Tenochtitlan was once more than just canals for transport. It harbored life's sacred rivers, where wisdom flowed freely like water in the rainy season that brought forth an abundance of crops. As he narrated tales of gods who walked amongst mortals and their influence on everyday lives, Zipili could see young eyes widen with wonderment as they listened to accounts of days when celestial events were celebrated without fear or hesitation or time before the world had changed so drastically. He recounted stories about ceremonies that united people under a shared sky, and how it was believed every person carried knowledge, like seeds waiting for rain in their hearts to sprout into understanding and connection with others around them. The conversations flowed from one story to the next as Zipili delved deep into Tenochtitlan's resilience during times of strife, how its people had adapted without surrendering their spirit, how they celebrated life even when faced with adversity, and yet never losing sight of their communion with nature. He spoke passionately about festivals that were not just celebrations, but a way to honor the cycles of existence itself. He shared tales where art was an embodiment of faith as much as it represented beauty, each brushstroke on murals narrating sagas across time immemorial in this city built by hands guided by divine intention. He painted images with words or panorama that extended beyond the bounds of mere storytelling and into a realm where history was not just remembered, but felt within one's very being, like an ancestral heartbeat echoing through generations who walked upon cobbled paths once tread by their forebears. Zipili's stories enveloped them in the essence of Tenochtitlan's soul that pulsated with every beat, and whispered tales to those willing to listen closely enough, as if each word was a step back into yesterday's embrace while today lay within their grasp like dewdrops on morning petals. As night unfurled its Inkai cloak across the land of Tenochtitlan, Zipili felt fulfilled. His legacy had not just been to share knowledge, but ignited a spark for these young minds that would carry forward stories they were now themselves partakers within and custodians beyond. His tales spoke into them an unspoken promise. He was nurturing seeds of wisdom in fertile soil, inviting growth as steady and sure as the flowing streams around their cities, core a sentinel for history not just to watch over but actively tend within each one who would remember. And with every story shared under that ancient tree, where whispers from generations converged into a chorus of living memory, Zipili saw reflections in the eyes before him not merely as children he had once been himself, were no longer unknowns to be guided but young guardians who would hold fast to their heritage and honor Tenochtitlan's enduring spirit. For stories are not just words spoken into silence, they resonate with echoes that shape the very essence of identity. Bridging the night had settled over Tenochtitlan with a gentle sigh that whispered through its streets and alleys. The sky blushed in hues of lavender, casting an ethereal glow upon waterways, reflecting back like mirror images to the world above. In this moment, before dusk became darkened night, Zipili gathered his most cherished companions around him, a motley crew whose youthful faces bore wisdom beyond their years, as they listened intently under a canopy of stars and ancient stone arches. "My children," began the elder with voice like wind chimes in calm breezes, "the time has come for me to pass on not just stories but lessons that run deeper than roots within our sacred soil." Zipili's eyes glistened as he addressed them one by one. His audience sat rapt. The young ones understood the weight of this occasion, for they were about to receive a legacy more valuable than gold, for it was knowledge and wisdom handed down through generations that would become their guide in days yet unseen. Their gathering place stood where once priests had recited tales beneath an ancient tree, whose branches now bore the whispers of history itself, or silent witness to countless stories told under its sheltering arms since time immemorial. As Zipili shared his final tale, he traced a path backward through their cities, heartbeats and lifeblood. Each word was an echo from days when Tenochtitlan had risen as the jewel of Mesoamerica, a beacon that now shone with renewed vigor in his young listeners' eyes. "Listen well, for I shall tell you a tale about our great cities' founding," Zipili said softly, "and all around them lay the world asleep except these few souls whose curiosity had been kindled into an unquenchable fire by his tales, their minds eager to drink from history's vast wellspring. Long before your forefathers reached this place of our ancestors' dreaming," he continued, weaving a narrative as intricate and enduring as the city itself, "we lived in harmony with nature." The young ones leaned forward closer to each other, a circle that mirrored their unity within Tenochtitlan's core. He spoke of how waterways had been revered not just for sustenance, but also seen by all as a source of life's sacred flow. Much like knowledge and history itself should be regarded in our lives today, it must circulate freely to nourish the soul of society. Zipili paused occasionally, allowing his listeners moments within silence or pause that became punctuations for reflection. He spoke next of great leaders who had come before them, whose wisdom echoed like water over stones, and how they too once gathered here with eager hearts under this same tree's embrace to share tales from beyond the known world. Their stories were seeds sown into fertile minds, promising growth as steady and sure as any stream nurtured by rains that fell upon Tenochtitlan. "Our leaders," Zipili stressed with reverence in his voice, "were not only warriors but also stalwart custodians of our heritage, who understood the strength found within knowledge and history." His listeners absorbed every word as if their spirit could reach through time to touch these ancestors' hands. As night deepened its hold upon Tenochtitlan, Zipili spoke of legends where heroes arose from humble beginnings, an enduring testament that the essence within us all can be channeled into greatness when nurtured by history and wisdom. He shared tales not just to entertain, but also to embolden these young guardians with a sense of purpose as unshakable as their ancestors' legacy. "And remember," Zipili concluded, The stories I tell are threads in the tapestry that is our peep loud living memory where each one can take hold and weave into its continuance." He saw understanding gloss as the Pili concluded his tales of heroism and wisdom under the moon's watchful eye. He felt a sense of peace settling over Tenochtitlan like dew upon morning leaves, or tranquil pause before new dawns broke across generations yet to be. The city lay in contemplative silence for a moment longer, as if it too acknowledged that the night's stories had been shared and absorbed, leaving behind an invisible thread of interconnected thoughts woven into hearts ready to awaken with purpose once more. Within this sacred circle of youthful minds gathered round Zipporah, their eager ears still resonant from his words, like drumbeats calling them back together in the days that would follow before they parted ways, each carrying a spark ignited by tales steeped in ancestral valor and sagacity. The night's embrace softened around their small forms as sleep beckoned to claim rest until it could return with fresh wisdom anew on another day like this one, when the world seemed alight not just from fires but also within souls touched deeply by history's gentle hand. Yet Zipili's parting words lingered in their dreams and whisper promises of continuance beyond his presence, ere vow to uphold legacies with the reverence due a sacred trust passed down through countless seasons. He had entrusted them not just as listeners, but guardians, each one an integral thread within Tenochtitlan's living memory tapestry, whose colors would forever be intermingled in shared heritage and identity. They parted ways under the comforting gaze of their ancestors, spirits that roamed freely amongst them as silent promise to return when called, perhaps not just for tales, but also as testament themselves to history's cyclical nature, where every end begets a new beginning with each guardian anew. And so they wandered through the city streets adorned by the shadows of ancient temples and pyramids that had borne witness to countless cycles before them, feeling as though their footsteps were guided not just forward in time, but also ever upward towards a shared destiny linked eternally with those who came before. Each child felt themselves part of something far greater than the sum total of individuals or collective consciousness, where every heartbeat echoed through ages past and future as one indivisible entity, resonant not just within Tenochtitlan, but beyond its storied boundaries into eternity's embrace. And in this realization lay their greatest strength, to become the living testament of a people who had conquered adversities by knowing well that courage resided as much within knowledge and memory as it did on battlefields wrought with strife, where valor was often tested against harsher foes than those from beyond world's known borders. As they retired to their respective homes, the stars overhead blinked in silent acknowledgement of this night's revelations, or constellation-like connection forged by shared stories and interwoven destinies that would stretch into horizons unseen yet felt as surely as if caressed directly from God's own hands. They had become not just bearers, but custodians, entrusted with tales of heroism sown deep within hearts to nurture growth akin to the steady flowing streams around Tenochtitlan that fed into mighty rivers destined for far-off seas and oceans beyond comprehension, or testament true as ever before. And so, in this moment suspended between night's end and morning's beginning, came an unspoken understanding. The stories shared were but one chapter among many awaiting to be written by these young guardians who would carry forward their legacy onward like streams, nourishing life wherever they flowed. For as Zipili had spoken, history was not just about recalling glories and wisdom of yesteryears, it also pulsed vibrantly in the present, that awaited its own chronicling with every sunrise bearing witness to a new generation poised on cusp between past's echoes and future's promise. Within their dreamscapes, young hearts embraced visions of themselves not merely as listeners but narrators, each one holding within them the power to inscribe upon life's canvas with strokes bold yet tender in memory, holding pigment that would honor both ancestors, spirits, and echo into forthcoming eras. As they lay nestled beneath blankets stitched from history, each read a tale waiting patiently for breath anew at dawn to unfurl across the expanse of time's endless tapestry, an unbroken lineage where every story told was as dawn's tentative fingers curled around Tenochtitlan's jade-green peaks and valleys. A hush settled upon the awakening city. It was as if night itself had been content to simply listen until now. The air shimmered with dew that clung like memories, too tender for daylight's intrusion or pure essence of time, where yesterday's tales could blossom anew under tomorrow's watchful gaze. In the heart of this slumbering metropolis, a circle formed as young guardians emerged from their dream world. each one adorned with trinkets and tokens inherited through generations, their tangible connection to those who had walked these very paths before them. The stones bore inscriptions not just in glyphs, but also the laughter of children, now quiet echoes that promised rebirth as sunlight painted golden streaks across cobalt waters. Today marked a sacred day or time for renewal, where ancestral spirits were revered and beckoned to guide these young souls into their own chapters in life's grand narrative, much like the streams that once nourished ancient crops now fed by new waterways. The guardians felt an innate call within them, not just bearers of heritage, but also custodians with quills poised over parchment or destiny to chronicle their people's journey through time, a tribute as vital and persistent as the very rivers that had long cradled Tenochtitlan. The eldest among them rose first. His voice was calm yet resonant against the awakening breeze, carrying whispers of ancestors who were now free to roam amongst spirits in realms beyond human sight, their wisdom unchained from silent oblivion and allowed passage through dreams into reality. His call summoned all guardians at Anza's symphony, where each note was a heartbeat synchronized with the pulse of history itself. As they gathered amidst groves that had witnessed countless sunsets, their shared breath formed an unseen bond, one not just forged through blood, but by kindred spirits resonating in harmony, a collective resolve to honor and perpetuate a legacy woven with threads both bright and somber. The guardians understood the weight of responsibility that history bestowed upon them as they felt its warmth embrace their shoulders, reminding each other not just where they had come from, but also pointing towards an unseen horizon awaiting fresh stories to be told beneath new doors. One by one, young hands reached for pigments and brushes, tools of creation that would soon dance upon canvases as guardians poured their inmost visions into strokes imbued with the hues of hope, courage, pain, love, and celebration, a spectrum where every color bore an ancestor's laughter or sorrow. Their hands were steady yet filled with reverence for what they did, to give form not only to their personal dreamscapes, but also as vessels through which tales would flow into the future like rivers finding new paths, even when ancient ways had vanished beneath progress. Relentless march. The guardians' eyes, reflecting skies from dawn till dusk, a kaleidoscope of possibilities and reflections on their shared path forward, glanced toward one another as they began to paint the world anew, with each sunrise that promised untold stories yet to be told. Tales not just about conquests or downfall, but also resilience, creativity, connection, wisdom passed from elders' lips and into youthful hearts. Today's journey through dreamscapes was more than a mere passage of time. It unfolded as an awakening within them. The guardians felt their spirits intertwined with every memory thread they had woven together in sleep, each one now ready to stand tall against life's tides or gentle breezes that sway through Tenochtitlan. The stories were not just for listening, but also speaking or dialogue between past and future, where the guardians found themselves as both audience and narrators of a history ever unfolding under heaven's watchful eyes, within earshot to hear their ancestors' silent blessings on each chosen path taken forward. As they prepared for departure beneath blankets embroidered with histories untold, the guardians knew that though some tales would be whispered and others shouted into existence by those who came after them, a relentless stream of life itself was at play, where every ending merely served as a prelude to new beginnings. With each heartbeat echoing ancestral drums long silent, the Esdorn painted its golden hues over Tenochtitlan's grand skyline. A muffled silence enveloped the sleeping city. It was as if time itself had paused to listen in reverence of this sacred moment when past and present converged within their hearts. The guardians gathered atop the Zed-Carlo beneath an expansive blue canvas where dreams were spun into reality, each one holding a thread from generations before them, at mosaic of experiences that had sculpted not only themselves, but also this vibrant civilization they called home. A hush fell upon their congregation as the matriarch opened her eyes and shared tales passed down through whispering winds, stories so potent with life's essence it seemed to breathe in sync with their collective heartbeats. Her voice was a lullaby that spoke of an age where Tenochtitlan kissed the heavens not just as a city, but as a living entity, a world-renowned metropolis pulsating with energy, wisdom, and unparalleled beauty. Our ancestors, she began softly, her gaze drifting over each face like sunlight through leaves. They too once lay awake beneath blankets embroidered not just with threads, but also dreams that stretched beyond this earth to touch the very stars, her hands fluttering slightly as if they themselves were wings capable of flight across time and space. As children, she continued, we listened intently under starlit skies while our elders recounted tales where humanity danced with gods, where every temple was a testament to their faith in the divine balance that kept them grounded yet yearning for greatness. The guardians nodded solemnly as they remembered those days when learning came not from books but through oral traditions, each story imbuing young minds with the values and virtues. Then she paused briefly to let a reverberation of silence pass before resuming her narrative thread by weaving tales that illustrated how their ancestors had built aqueducts which snaked, like the sinews, through Tenochtitlan's heart, supplying water from distant lakes. She spoke passionately about artisans who crafted masterpieces in gold and featherwork with hands guided by divine inspiration, or testament to their creativity that still echoes today within our streets adorned with murals as vibrant as the dreams of olden ones. Our ancestors lived life, she mused, her voice a tender caress against time's unyielding march forward, as though every breath was an offering to something greater, a connection that transcended mere existence. Her eyes glinted with pride and sorrow for times gone by, yet hope as brightly shining beams of sunlight piercing through the canopy above. But here we stand, she concluded, her gaze now fixed upon each guardian's face, or mirror to their lineage's legacy etched in every eyeline and cheekbone wrinkle, carved by years not just lived but celebrated with joy, sorrow, triumph, defeat. We are the custodians of our people's soul. We must carry forward these stories that bind us. As she finished speaking, her words hung heavy in the air like incense scent carrying whispers from beyond time and space, where their ancestors watched over them with prideful eyes full of untold blessings. It was then, amid this sacred silence broken only by heartbeats that beat as one, a guardian named Cuauhtémoc stepped forward to speak on behalf of those no longer present, but forever felt through the very core of their being, his voice steady and clear. We are not just hearers, he addressed his kin with an earnestness born from centuries within. Our tales will be told, our dreams woven into reality by hands guided as much by memories touch as hope's caress. Cuauhtémoc spoke of the future world, where their legacy would continue through art that mirrored life and love stories etched upon history itself. We are guardians, he continued, for every stone in our temples holds tales not just spoken but felt within souls across generations. With conviction as powerful as any monarch's decree, Cuauhtémoc urged his people to remember that while they may build palaces and pyramids of marble or dust, their greatest monument would always be the spirit-forged connections between one another. As he concluded his address, amidst nodding heads filled with generations' worth of wisdom passed down through in chapter 28, as if carried by a gentle zephyr through their village and into dreams across lands untouched yet felt in every heartbeat of those who remember, the echoes of Cuauhtémoc's words settled over the community like dew upon morning grass. His promise to carry forward stories that breathed life beyond mere stone was a beacon for many, guiding them towards an intertwining destiny with their past and present a harmonious dance where every step reverberated through time itself. Underneath the vast expanse of stars whose light had journeyed far to touch upon these humble lives, artisans found solace in shaping clay into vessels, each curve a homage not only to their ancestors' ingenuity but also as symbols for unity and continuation, or visual ode that even now the hands were working under Cuauhtémoc's unseen guidance. The art they created was more than mere decor. It became an echo of history, imbued with tales waiting to be told through touch upon skin or eyes alight in wonderment, within halls and plazas where gatherings celebrated heritage daily. Within the homes that stood as silent witnesses, families gathered around hearths, not only for warmth but also shared stories of their lineage, each recounting a thread from history's rich tapestry, their words painting vivid pictures in minds already soaked with memories. Children listened intently to tales that seemed as old and vast as the mountains encasing them. Every story served as an invisible hand leading young ones through lessons of courage, love, sacrifice, which were more than history but also stepping stones into their own future, as their future built on reverence for those who had walked before, in sacred groves where whispers became prayers, Elders spoke to the spirits in hushed tones during twilight gatherings. Each word was a testament of gratitude, acknowledging that while they may no longer walk among them physically, their essence continued through stories sown with faith and hope, or legacy not just remembered but felt as warmth upon cheeks or rippling in the soul's quiet waters. Here stood palaces grandiose to touch every sense. Marble gleamed under a sun that seemed ever kindred since time immemorial. Yet it was understood these structures were fleeting like sand through fingers, an ephemeral contrast against their eternal spirits. Within the hallowed temple walls, priests and priestesses offered prayers, not just to gods, but also as an homage to those who had once stood in devotion before them, knowing that with every chanted verse or ritual performed on these sacred grounds, they were part of a continuum stretching back through countless generations in unbroken line from the first stone laid upon this very earth. It was here within their hearts and actions the community lived as if Cuauhtémoc himself guided them in every gesture toward preserving history not just for itself, but also as an offering to all who would one day look back through time's looking-glass, or legacy imprinted upon the very essence of society. In gardens where life bloomed with relentless vigor, nature did not cease in its work despite humanity's ephemeral existence, and here, too, was a lesson taught by hands that believed themselves guardians, for even as seasons turned from verdant spring to the silent fall of winter's snow, their heritage remained immortalized, a continuing story told not with words, but through an enduring respect for lands, bounty, and beauty. These gardens were halls where flowers whispered secrets older than time itself. Every petal held a memory that transcended the physical plane to inspire those who walked among them, offering silent encouragement towards harmony between humankind's artistry and earth, Mother's grace, or symbiotic relationship forged in respect. As night embraced their world, people gathered under starlit skies that seemed as familiar friends whose light had watched over eons of human endeavor, sharing dreams woven from hopeful aspirations to honor those who came before them with actions reflective of Cuauhtémoc's vision. Each person understood this night was a canvas for the community's shared spirit or collective heartbeat, synchronized not just by ancestral echoes, but also through dreams that transcended sleep and woke in communal resolve to uphold traditions, culture, and history with every breath they took together. Within quiet homes where tales were sown, elders recounted legends of older time when the earth spoke as dusk's gentle fingers caressed the edges of day, painting them with shades of purple and gold. A hush fell over Elder Maria's weathered face. She stood in her garden, her small sanctuary, where every leaf and bloom was meticulously cared for as if she were tending to each one personally. The air carried the faint scent of jasmine mixed with earth, creating an olfactory promise that another night would unfold its wonders beneath a blanket of stars soon to be in full view come evening. Children gathered around their grandmother Arnor's knees as she began spinning tales from before time itself, when the world was still young and wild. Her storyteller, whose voice, now more timid than firm, had been an anchor for generations of her family's narratives. In this garden, where flowers whispered secrets older than history, Arnor spoke softly but with conviction about a spirit named Cuauhtémoc who once walked these lands, and how his vision shaped the very soul of their community or legacy, now cradled in every petal that swayed to an unseen breeze. Cuauhtémoc believed, Arnor began, her voice steady as a flowing stream, that by nurturing nature itself we honored those who laid the first stones of this village. Her grandchildren listened with rapt attention, their eyes wide and curious beneath brows furrowed in focus. The eldest circle grew larger that evening under the glow of lantern light, as more joined to hear Arnor's tales, each sharing anecdotes about festivals past, where dances seemed like a vibrant tapestry woven into midnight air and music was carried on wings made from laughter. These were stories not just told but felt in the very marrow of their bones, or communal dance that transcended time, binding them closer to one another with every tale recounted under watchful eyes belonging equally both past guardianship and present kinship. A soft murmur spread through Elder Carlos's lineage as his grandchildren were told how once upon a timeless moment Cuauhtémoc had stood at this very spot, declaring the land sacred, or testament to their collective spirit of respect for Earth Mother's grace that still flowed in each drop of rain and every sunbeam kissing dew-laden leaves. The children grew quiet as they heard tales wherein even the smallest insect played a part in Curmach's world, an ecological harmony reverberating through generations, an ancient understanding that life was interconnected beyond human reckoning or reason. It thrived on mutual respect and kindness for all living things. As night's curtain drew nearer to close the day's chapter fully, Elder Warner spoke of how their people had once looked upon these grounds with reverence, not just as a dwelling but as an extension of themselves, as their sacred communion between humanity and nature that required no words save for actions rooted in intention. She described times when hands turned the soil tenderly around seedlings, each touch imbued with hopeful aspirations to honor their predecessors through living testimonies woven into Earth's tapestry, a symbiotic relationship where every bloom was a sentinel standing guard for memory and continuity. The community's shared heartbeat quickened as tales of past trials, tribulations faced together by ancestors yet unborn to the storyteller herself, but whose spirits still whispered through leaves, rustling in harmony with Elder Warner's voice, a reminder that their bonds were not just inherited from those who walked before them. "And so," said Arna, her wrinkled hands folded neatly together as if they held the very essence of Curmach's vision itself, "we too have become guardians in our own right, custodians for this sacred trust bestowed upon us." Her words resonated with a truth deeper than roots sinking into fertile ground. In their quiet homes, where tales were not just told but lived out loud through the gardens and fields, each person understood that night was more than darkness. It was an open sky under which dreams took flight, dreams woven from aspirations to cherish traditions with every breath they shared. In this communal spirit of respect for both past guardianship and future stewardship, the people resolved silently together in their sleep-fueled visions that no matter what tomorrow brought forth or challenges faced within Earth, as twilight embraced Curmach's village with its cool fingers of dusk, and as shadows stretched like longing across generations-old Kabbalists, Arna felt a profound sense of peace wash over her, a serenity that seemed to stem from the very earth beneath their feet. The sun had dipped below the horizon when Arna took one last stroll through Elder Warner's flourishing garden before nightfall fully claimed its dominion. The day's end brought with it a gentle hush, not unlike the quiet that falls over listeners as they settle deeper into sleep or silence, so profound in her village, where each heartbeat felt like an echo of ancestral resilience and unity. It was here, among Elder Warner's roses and dahlias, their petals holding within them reflections of the community's own history, that Arna had often found herself lost to time, immersed in tales as intricate as the vines themselves, weaving through trellis each story a thread entwined with her soul. The roses bloomed not only for beauty but also stood sentinel over memories of those who came before them. Their roots ran deep into stories untold and secrets held within soil rich as the history they symbolized, while dahlias danced in defiance to wings that sought to erode what had been built, or testament to endurance. Elder Warner's garden was a living mosaic of nature's artistry, where each plant played its role with silent eloquence, as if sharing whispers from ages past through rustling leaves and swaying stems, carrying echoes that only souls attuned could perceive, a resonance like the comforting hum of an old lullaby. As Arna walked homeward under a sky awash with indigo streaks heralding nightfall's approach, she felt as though each leaf crunched beneath her steps carried imprints of bygone days, when spirits unseen would walk among them in unity and strength, their communal tapestry woven from shared experiences that bonded hearts across time. The village had always known the value of their collective dream. It was a legacy entrusted to those who dared not just survive, but thrive together, forging ahead with reverence toward ancient ways while embracing new growth as tender shoots promised by spring's warmth yet unseen in winter's chill. Sitting down at the hearth of her own modest home, or place where Arna had sown seeds alongside generations before and would sow more with those to follow, she took a deep breath, letting it linger among kindling that crackled like distant memories sparking through time's expanse. The flames leaped upward as if trying desperately to kiss the stars hidden beyond their window panes. Yet they remained bound within these walls, where warmth and light were shared in equal measure by all who dwelled therein, a testament to communal spirit that no darkness could steal away for long. In this room of stores, where every corner held traces of laughter mingled with the sweetness of tears shed during times when sorrow had touched too close and left its mark on their hearts as indelible as ink upon parchment, yet never stayed, they endured because that is what generations before them did best. Her mother's voice still danced through her mind like a song from the past. We must remember to tend our gardens of life with love and care for all seasons. As Arna reached out toward an old, leather-bound tome resting on shelves lined with heirlooms passed down over generations, a repository of narratives that had braved the test of time as steadfastly as Stuart Mach himself once stood firm against adversity. She traced her finger along embossed letters, feeling a kinship to those who penned each word with their own essence woven between lines and in cashiered resolve that echoed through the ages like ripples upon water's surface caused by butterfly wings' gentle flap. The tales were many of ancestors whose wisdom had guided them to harmonize existence within nature as they themselves lived it out, a symphony where every creature and plant played its part, humanity among the chorus line, not just an audience or soloist, but integral to maintaining life's grand composition. Tales told by candlelight that danced shadows against stone walls, while moonbeams cast silvered paths over time-worn tomes, each page a window into shared experiences of love.